a group of 7-year-old kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? And then check back in, say, a decade later, I suspect most of the answers will have changed. Not me. I always knew I was going to be a vet, and I worked tirelessly to get there. Hours of studying and weeks of placement on farms and in vet practices, until finally getting that call from Glasgow Vet School to say I'd been accepted. I could not stop smiling. The dream was coming true. Now, veterinary medicine is a 5-year course, and I always knew it would be challenging, but I never expected to feel the way I did at the end of my first year. I hated it, and the closer I got to being a vet, the more I thought I made a terrible mistake. This was not the career I had been dreaming of since I was a kid. I wanted a job that I was passionate about, that would excite me, and that didn't feel like a chore. This wasn't it. I was bored by the course, and the more I learned, the less interested I became. None of it excited me. However, I couldn't quit. I had told everyone I'd ever met that I was going to be a vet. How could I quit now? I'd feel like a failure. Instead, I spent the next few years dragging myself to lectures and tutorials for a subject that didn't interest me, knowing that a lifetime working as a vet would not bring me joy. I dealt with this huge life problem by sticking my head in the sand. Let's just ignore the problem and hope it gets better. Until one day in my 3rd year, I was informed that I could complete an 8-week research placement instead of the compulsory placement that we usually do in veterinary practices. I jumped at the chance. It wasn't as though I wanted to do research, I just really didn't want to be anywhere near a veterinary practice. And I was willing to try anything else at this stage. I still remember walking to the lab on that first day. I was full of nervous excitement, and I felt way out of my comfort zone. The lab I was working in was focused on understanding the effects of tropical blood parasites on the rhythm and function of the heart. Everyone is aware that the whole heart contracts to force blood through the body. But did you know that isolated heart muscle cells, or cardiomyocytes, can still contract after they're removed from the heart? I was shown these twitchy little cells on a plastic dish my first day, and my mind was blown. My job was to measure how often and how fast these cells twitched after exposure to different parasites. This would help our understanding of the effects that different tropical blood parasites could have on heart rhythm and contraction of the whole organ. Working in the lab for the first time was the steepest of learning curves. It felt like being tasked to create a Michelin star quality meal, having never successfully boiled an egg before. It was the most challenging 8 weeks of my degree. I worked as many hours as possible in the lab before going home to do extra reading, trying to get to grips with the project. By the end of the 8 weeks, I was exhausted and exhilarated. It was the most enjoyable thing I had done my entire course. That first week in the lab was enough to convince me that research was my future career. Suddenly, I had a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, and I was relieved that the last 3 years of studying had not been in vain. With newfound hope to cling on to, I made it through those last 2 years of my degree. In my final year, I interviewed at Edinburgh University for a place in their research PhD programme. I felt confident, that is until I arrived. There were 20 to 30 other applicants there, and I quickly realised that I was the least experienced in the room. Everyone had completed long research projects and additional master's degrees, and I was there with my single small summer project on my CV. I wanted on this programme so much, but before I'd even interviewed, I sat there in that small room, and inside I could feel my chance was slipping. Despite my pessimism, the interview went well, and I was hopeful when I left. I received an email the following week. Unfortunately, it informed me that I would not be offered a place. My heart sank at reading those words. That little ray of hope was gone, and I was starting to realise I would have to be a vet after all. A few months later, I'm sitting at my dining table. I have a large mug of strong coffee in one hand, and I'm trawling through notes as I'm trying to prep for an interview as a junior vet, when my phone pings with an email notification. On the lock screen it says, email, Edinburgh University, subject matter, PhD programme. I almost dropped my coffee as I desperately tried to open my phone and look at the email. I think I read it twice before I breathed, and probably 4 times before I actually understood what it was telling me. I was in. An extra place had become available, and it was mine if I wanted it. I proceeded to jump out of my chair, and I'll admit I did do a short and embarrassing victory dance before I grabbed my phone and I just called everyone, my family, friends, anyone that would answer. I was buzzing. Immediately I felt this weight lift from my shoulders. I was stepping into a new career, minimal experience. I was going to spend the next 4 years as a poor student. I was ecstatic. I've now been working in cancer research for nearly a decade, and I plan to spend the rest of my career in the lab. Changing career and childhood dream was a risk, but it was also the single best decision I've made in my life. I urge everyone to follow your passion. Find a job that gets you out of bed with a smile on your face. Don't get stuck in a job or a career path just because that's what's expected, or because you're afraid to look like a failure for quitting. Do what makes you happy, and if you like problem solving and constantly being challenged, then try research. It can be infuriating at times, but it is always interesting. What more could you ask for?